computer. Okay, Peggy, hello, nice to see you.
Hi, wait, I have to decide which glasses I need to wear. I can't paint. These ones are fine. These are fine.
Those
No,
are
no.
good. Those are good. So I'm just going to introduce you really quickly and say this is my friend Peggy, and this is her book, Unraveling. And I've been reading it in the hospital with my mom, which is a very appropriate place to be reading this. I'm in a hospital right now. You were dealing with a sick father at the time that you were writing this as well.
Yeah,
Do you want to talk about that first?
sure. I mean, I haven't, it's funny because I've been, doing a little bit of talking about this book and nobody really asked me about that.
Mhm.
So my dad, who died last August, was, of course, during lockdown, he's in Minneapolis, was in Minneapolis, so I couldn't go see him, which was really hard. And he was sinking into, progressive dementia. And he also got COVID. That was also fun. But survived, along with surviving he fell and broke his pelvis during that time too and survived. But, you know, one of the things is it's so hard, this whole time of life when our parents are aging and becoming infirm and caring for them. It's such a, for those of us, it doesn't happen for everybody. It's such a rite of passage. Um,
Yeah, and the
and
reason I'm muting my camera is that there's so much hospital noise right now that I'm just turning it down when you're talking. So that's what we'll be doing. Just, for people that are watching, I'm in the hospital, my mom's sick, you were dealing with your dad. But
yeah,
this book really, I'm gonna hold it up again. This book is really about, to my mind, what do you do when you don't know what to do? How do you fill the time? And you started this during the pandemic. Why don't I let you tell the story of not only how Unraveling came to be, but how you came to write this book in the first place? I mean, to do the project in the first place.
I mean, Unraveling was pretty much what I was doing. It was a pandemic. I think I was like one of the last people to have writers to have a book out the old fashioned way. I had just finished my book tour for Boys and Sex, and the natural next step was that I was going to start doing these speaking engagements and, all this thing. That's what I was going to do. And then, I actually turned around on the way to the airport, I was on my way to do some speaking engagements, and I thought, I don't think it's a good idea, and I turned around and canceled. And 3 days later, the country shut down.
I
So
remember I saw you on the Boys and Sex tour. I was there. I got my book signed, and I actually remember thinking as we were sitting there, should we be sitting here?
really, because
Yeah.
I was completely clueless. One of my girlfriends texted me, the emoji, the monkey emoji, and it said COVID-19, and I thought, what? What's she talking about? And I had to Google it and thought, "Ah, that's just SARS.
Yeah, whatever that. Yeah,
That's
that's
not
all
gonna
right.
be a thing." I wasn't worried.
So how did you like come up with the idea of making a sweater from scratch, and literally from scratch, meaning shearing the sheep, making the wool, making the string, making the colors? How did that's a, and also it's sort of a crazy idea and a perfect idea, and it becomes this kind of philosophical meditation on life. That's what I loved about it. It's like, it's not just about knitting, it's about life.
No, it's very little about knitting. It's my little red handbook. Um, yeah, I mean, I really have always, I've always knit, and I just, I think it's just that curiosity of the writer that I always would sort of look at my yarn and think, who thought of yarn? How did yarn happen? You know, and and I decided, well, it would be a really good story to go and learn how to shear a sheep, and I would try periodically. And also I had this, like, when I moved out to the Bay Area from New York, I had a completely skewed vision of Northern California as being much crunchier than in fact it really is. And I started sort of that, I'm going to learn how to windsurf, and I'm going to learn how to shear sheep, and I'm going to learn how to, like all these things that were sort of like anything but New York sort of things. But I never did it, and it was not easy to get into these classes. So suddenly I had time, and I also think I have this, like, I had this I have a weird Jewish origin story in that my ancestors were homesteaders in the Dakotas.
Which is really weird for Jews, by the way. Like
Yeah,
that doesn't, I mean, I had Jews that ended up in Kansas City, but like homesteaders, that's a whole other set of, like, that's
yeah.
not. That's not Jewish.
Lumberjacks. On the other side, they were lumberjacks and homesteaders. So I grew up on homestead stories, which I realized, there's a lot that we could, unpack about the homestead being right near the Standing Rock Reservation and all this kind of stuff. But I grew up on these stories that my grandpa would tell me about about homesteading and picking choke cherries and breaking wild horses. And so I always had these kind of fantasies around this stuff too, I think around the West and these things that are, politically dubious, but still, there they were. And so all of that combined to make me just think, well, maybe this is the time to do it. And then when I talked to my editor about it, I thought, they're just going to mock me, like what a crazy, but everybody was off baking sourdough, right? Everybody was up doing these things. So they were like, well, of course you want to go shear sheep. That's what one would want to do right now. And they were, so they were sort of like all about it. So off I went.
I'm sorry, like there's noise in this hospital, but anyway, we're gonna power through because that's what you did with the sheep too. So what I was interested in is you had to get special clothing to shear sheep, like special shoes, special coat, special everything. Tell me about the clothing.
Special shoes. The shoes, because sheep excrete this waxy substance called lanolin, which you might remember from when you were nursing your children and you put it on your cracked nipples. It's very good for that. And it's in your lipsticks and all kinds of stuff. And it makes them very slippery, like greased up toddlers. They're wriggling, except they have hooves and they're trying to kick you. It doesn't hurt them to be sheared, but they don't like it. Nobody, it's like, my dog doesn't like it when we cut her either. No,
I know. I had to cut my dog during COVID too. That was no fun. Yeah,
they don't like it. It's not that it hurts them; they just don't like it. But your dog doesn't have hooves, and so the lanolin is on the floor, and if you just use a normal shoe, you'll just go whoop, bang and land on your butt. So you really need to use these. They're made of suede and they're kind of cute. I still have them, but they have like sheep yuck on them. So when you use them on the floor, they stick. And then it's the hardest thing I ever did, Deb. It is so bloody hard. And
it sounded it, and you described it really well. And I love that you found a female sheep shearer. That must have been hard to find somebody who was a female and shearing a sheep, because you have to be big and strong.
Yeah, there are very few. Oops, wait, I think my dog, no, my dog heard me talking about her. Now she's like, it's time to go outside. Oh wait. So yeah, I really wanted to learn throughout the book. What I really tried to do was to challenge ideas of who does what. And I never really, that's the only one I overtly said something about, where I said I really wanted to learn from a woman. And there are almost no women who shear sheep. It's a very male dominated kind of sexist, misogynist world. But I also, throughout the book, the other teachers, I wanted to pick people because there's this like stereotype of people who do textile or fiber work or knitting or whatever, that they're older, that they're white, that they're, sort of culturally irrelevant. And while I think, on the face of it, that in itself is an ageist sexist proposition that needs to be challenged. So what if we were? So what if that was our demographic, but it's not. And so I really wanted to, all the teachers are something that's not that, they're gay, they're gender fluid, they're of color, they're something. So that I didn't want to just have a book full of people like me.
Right. That was smart. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the shearing teacher, oh my God, I have got to let my dog out. I'm sorry.
Go.
Go outside.
We got sheep, we got dogs, we got animals.
My dog, if I'm speaking to somebody, she thinks that I'm going to go outside and throw the ball for her. While I talk. But anyway, so I really wanted a female sheep shearer. Only I think fewer than 5% of sheep shearers are female. But I found this lovely young woman named Laura Kincaid, who has several inches on me, and is way stronger and half my age. And it didn't really occur to me to think that might be a concern. Like, oh, sure, I can go out and flip a 150-pound animal over with hooves and go at it with a hot whirring blade with no safety that could chop my finger off. No problem. You know how you do that as a writer? You just kind of don't really. Well, you do. You just think, sure.
Yeah, exactly. I can go to war. I can do whatever I want.
You can go to war. You can go to a war. That's what I was thinking. You can go to a war zone. Sure, no problem. That'll be fun.
Yeah,
You
and then
just kinda go-
you come back and you're like, whoa, that was crazy. Well, actually, this is a good segue to, so the book on one level is about learning to shear sheep and turning that into yarn and turning that into a sweater. What was the underneath part of this? What were you, here's a better question. What were you trying to learn? What were you thinking you were going to learn? And what inevitably did you learn at the end of this? And did those two things match?
You're so good. I mean, there's the part about the yarn and the creativity piece, and that's one set of things that I was looking at, and that was, I think, what I learned from that was to love process, to rekindle creativity,
Yeah.
to rediscover that beginner's mind, because I think when you do something like what we do for a living, that you go into it because you have this love of writing or of creating, and while that's still there, I mean, you and I make our living doing this, you know, so you have to really think about marketplace, you have to think about money, you have to think about what's going to sell and how you're going to sell. And that on one hand, it keeps you going because it's hard to write, and maybe I wouldn't even do it, you know, get my things done if that weren't if I didn't have these deadlines and these pressures and these financial obligations. But on the other hand, it erodes some of the joy that I used to feel in writing. And to go back to and do something where I was just going to suck, you know, where I just was not going to be good at it, and just have to enjoy. And I resisted and resisted. I'm always like, ugh, I'm terrible at this. Ugh, I'm terrible. And like kind of castigating myself until I finally come to like, oh, wait, that's the point. Cool at this. Hooray. I can actually just enjoy doing it. And the fact that it's going to be not a great result, so what?
Right.
You know, I learned so much. I mean, and I keep branching outward and talking about like the nature of color, or, you know, why we don't think about our clothing, why we don't think about what we put on our body, the way we have learned to think about what we put in our body, or all this history, all this lore that I just never would have discovered if I hadn't just gone out to be a rank amateur. So that's one set of things. And then the other set of things was more about me as a woman and as a person, and that I was going through this whole process as I was, you know, not really confronting midlife, confronting coming to the end of midlife, really.
Yeah.
And the empty nest,
Yeah,
and
your
my
daughter leaving.
for college, my husband getting older, my mother. I mean, I start in the beginning of the book, I talk about how when lockdown hit, I talked all day, every day to my mom, which was kind of funny because my mom was dead. And I just was like talking to her in my head the whole time. And my dad's declining. And, you know, we started out talking about that and feeling that learning with him to get to, and this was to a degree of luxury because I wasn't there and I wasn't the one doing the hard work that my brothers were doing, but finding a way to value and love him and connect with him as he went through these last years where you know, he knew less, remembered less and less, and finally at the end we're sitting on, I was screen sharing with him, and we're watching Laurel and Hardy, which he liked and I hated. And I think about that, watching the screen, I suddenly think, wow, this was made when he was like 6 or 10 years old or something. And I could imagine him sitting in the theater, and this was like the way the world looked. You know, this was like the cars and the women's outfits and everything. This was like not old fashioned to him. He was seeing this like, this is my life. And just looking at his sparkling eyes, watching this on the screen, and thinking about him when he was 6 or 10, and thinking about my little boy dad, and just being able to love was sort
The little boy that he was,
and the little boy that he was again, you know, that he came, and being able to sort of have that moment of pure love for him was one of the few and very important gift of those years of kind of difficulty and pain and decline.
Well, also in a way where, sorry,
Rapid response team,
where
room 48.
rapid response team.
Rapid response team to room 487. Rapid response team.
Just so appropriate.
I know. This is just like, I'm trying to do an interview in a hospital because my mom's sick and we're talking about your dad being sick. It's
Right.
absolutely par for the course. So I'm just going to go with it. Anyway, one of the things that I was thinking of as you're talking about your dad being a little boy is that shearing sheep, learning to sew, learning to knit the sweater from scratch, from making the wool and making the colors. You are in essence becoming a little girl at the same time. You're reclaiming your joy of being a child and that childlike glee of discovery and creative discovery. And so to me, that was really like the book was working on so many levels, but it was also like the little girl in you was meeting the little boy in him. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Aw.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I talk, in terms of that creativity piece, again, I talk about this. I used to have this Linda Berry, Linda Berry is such a genius on creativity. And I had this Linda Berry cartoon in my office for a long time where she talks about how when you're a kid, you just have this like creative, ability to just pretend and do and draw, and it doesn't matter, you're just doing it for this like pure joy. And then at some point I talk about this concept called creative mortification that the psychologist Ron Peggy came up with, and it's just like at some point somebody goes, well, that sucks, or like they say something that's just mean or harsh, and you just shut down, and it's called creative mortification. And after that, Linda says you start asking these two questions: is it good and does it suck? And as long as you're trapped in is it good and does it suck, you've lost process, and you've
Right.
lost the kind of joy that allows you to create in that free-flowing way. And I feel like to a degree, I hit a point, particularly when I was dying with blue, which is really hard to do, where I suddenly thought, it doesn't matter if it's good or if it sucks. It matters that I'm doing it. And if you're doing it professionally, yeah, for some, of course, and you should be asking, but rather than is it good or does it suck, Ron says, ask like, what worked? What didn't work? What would I like to do differently next? So there's other ways to approach that, but just for me, like to get beyond, I mean, that is pretty much in my head the whole time I'm writing. I don't know about you, but I'm always thinking, is this good or does this suck, basically?
I'm always thinking that 100%. I'm always thinking that. And in fact, it's a very binary way of thinking. But my question now, I guess, also is now that you've done this and this book goes out into the world and you're going to probably do, whatever touring we can in this era of pandemic, but does this make you want to take on another kind of crazy project that you feel like, oh, I can't do this at all?
So much. I would so love to do that. I mean, I keep thinking like, I want to be George Plimpton. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think I can only do that if this book does well, but if that were to be the case, I would be so happy to make a career pivot to just doing lunatic things like that. I mean, it would be my joy. I love, because also it's not, this sounds kind of weird, but it's not who I am as a person in a way, like I'm actually a fairly, not fearful, but I'm not somebody who puts myself out there in a lot of ways. But when I'm doing my journalism thing, I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm putting my superhero cape on.
Totally. And I actually wrote about that in Shutter Babe. I said that the camera turned me into the superhero. That's why I named it that. Yeah. It's like you go into this phone booth and you become, you're giving yourself a license
Yes.
to discover. And it's interesting because my son recently decided he wanted to go to the House of Yes, which he's not allowed to go to because he's 16 years old, but he wanted to see what it was like and photograph it for his class. And the camera gave him license to do that. The House of Yes was like, okay, come on in, little boy. Just you have to be with the other photographer and we have to watch you and make sure you don't drink any liquor. But like the camera gave him license, just like doing this project, doing shearing a sheep gave you license to learn something new. And I am dying to see what you do. Like, actually, I do think, I hope this book does well, and that's why I'd like to talk to you today. But I think that there is such worth in, especially at our age, when we feel like life is over, we're over, we raised our kids, what's next? Like to be able to have that what's next on the horizon feeling is extraordinary.
Well, that piece, whatever I do, I think that's where I have to go. When I look at my, to a degree, people would say, well, gosh, Unraveling, that's kind of a departure from sex, but I don't feel like it is, because first of all, I feel like my beat has always been like examining the unexamined aspects of ordinary life. So it fits that, but also I feel like my books have really gone with the arc of my life. And starting with Schoolgirls, that I was sort of a girl myself when I wrote that. I was relating to that. I wasn't relating to that as a mother, or I was relating to that as it being sort of about me. And moving forward, and talking about women and life choices, being a mom, all this stuff. And now I'm at a new place. And that's exactly what I've been thinking lately, is like, what's next? And why do we put all this, there's like shelves and shelves and shelves and shelves and shelves of books on, work and family for women and all this kind of stuff. But that's now, these days in our life cycle, that's a pretty short part of your life.
It's 20 years. Well, I mean, depending on how many kids you have. For me, it's going to be 100 years. But anyway, like it's a period of your time of life, and then there's
and then there's another one, and nobody's talking about what that one is, right? So I do feel very strongly that I'm kind of looking at that and thinking about what this next part of life is or could be. And if I could really do anything, I'd probably go jump into doing a whole bunch of other kind of extreme unusual things, and writing about them, and seeing where and doing the same kind of braiding. I mean, that's what I think for me makes a book work, is the braiding of the thing, the plot, and the personal reflection, meditation, and then also all the stuff that you never knew about it, all the sort of background stuff.
Totally. And I also think, I mean, I know that you moved during this period in time as well. And part of me was reading this thinking, oh, well, that's why she moved, because she felt empowered to move, right? Like that you felt that you could have a new chapter in your life.
Well, also the tax laws changed, the property tax laws in California, so that helped. But I did really feel, honestly, I mean, I know there's a lot of people who want to like live forever in their house, and the house where they raise their kids, and have that around them. I am not like that, and I was so happy to just go out with the old. I really wanted it gone. I did not want to sit and marinate in memory. I wanted to start this new phase. My Daisy, my daughter, she was like, she never wanted to, where we lived was kind of remote. We lived up on the hill in Berkeley, and it was kind of rural and remote and hard to get. You certainly couldn't sneak out of your room and go see your friends. And now we live right in the center of Berkeley. And she's like, why didn't you do this when I was still in high school? I can't believe you didn't do this earlier. I'm like, this was the time.
Well, now,
really,
and now she'll come home from college and she'll be able to have that, so
she likes coming home from college, and her room is smaller, so there's that trade-off. But yeah, the idea of just saying like, I want to start a new chapter, and I want to get rid of as much of the old stuff as makes sense. I mean, obviously you keep certain things, but it made me feel a lot light. I was saying to my husband that we have a bunch of bins, of course, that just went right into storage. And I said, I want to go through those bins again and see what else we can get rid of. I just want to get rid of stuff. I want a lighter life.
Yeah, and that is what we should be doing at this period, like getting rid of stuff and having more experiences. And that can be sort of a summary of everything. So I guess for my last question, the question is, what would you like me to ask you that I haven't asked you? What do you want to say about this book in the short time we have left that you feel that is important for people to know about the book?
You've done such a good job, Deb.
Thank you so much.
I just think it's a really fun read, and I really wanted to sort of that it's it is a book about the crafting stuff, but you don't have to be it's not for crafters per se. It's a book that's really for anybody who's reflecting on midlife, anybody who's in this point, and you will along the way learn all kinds of really amazing stuff that will make you see the world around you, and particularly what you put on your body, in a different way.
So I agree with that completely. And I want to say one more thing, which is that I laughed, I would say 3 times a page. Like, you have so many jokes just folded in there that I was guffawing while I was reading this. So it's not just sort of like a book about craft. It's not only a book about process. It's not only a book about how do we live our middle age better, but it is one of the funniest books I've read in a long, long time.
Oh, thank
So
you.
I want to thank you for just, I mean, I'm in a hospital right now. Thank you for keeping me laughing while I'm in a hospital. The book, by the way, is called Unraveling. It's by Peggy Orenstein. She's brilliant. She wrote Girls and Sex and Boys and Sex, and I'm sure you all know her by now, but this is both a departure and not a departure. I think what it is it is the evolution of Peggy, and I really cannot wait to see what you do next.
Oh, thank you, Deb. This was super fun.
Thank you. Bye. Hold on
Bye.
1 second, because I'm gonna like come back to you. Hold on 1 second. No, wait, I gotta stop this right here. Where's the end recording?